Nicola Centofanti, look, you're the Shadow Agriculture Minister, Nicola. We've got a lot of hats you're going to wear during this chat. How are you going today?
Good, thanks, Ricky. How are you?
All right, I know you're the Shadow Minister for Water in the River Murray. It is warm at the moment. We'll get into the water towards the end, but we've got to take care of things on the farm first. And biosecurity, we've faced a number of challenges here in South Australia and nationwide, particularly from our neighbours. Are we adequately prepared for the next biosecurity threat?
Yeah, look, Ricky, I think it is critical to note the absolute importance of traceability with any stock movement, not just from a biosecurity point of view, but from a food safety perspective. And it also has some benefits around, sustainability. The opposition, we unequivocally support efforts to improve traceability. In fact, the idea of things like electronic identification started in South Australia as an industry-led initiative. But this was really backed by the former Liberal government with some funds to really try and determine a base case for EID in South Australia. So we've always supported improvements in traceability. It is critical to ensure that, in touch wood, it doesn't happen, Ricky, but, if there is an outbreak of emergency animal diseases, that we can really stamp down on it as quickly as possible. We know that the Federal Minister, Murray Watts, announced on the 9th of September last year, which was ratified by all the state agricultural ministers, that his government was moving to mandate the use of sheep and goat electronic identification tags by January 1, 2025. And look, I think the issue that poses is that it's moved the goalposts now for producers by going around the industry, cutting a deal with agricultural ministers, and now the industry is forced to roll out a mandated program with really no certainty around what financial support the Labor government will provide to the industry through this process and what that will mean to, not only producers but to their animals and their livelihood. So many questions remain unanswered, Ricky. It's really important that we do get traceability right. But, it is critically important that the government are answering some of these questions.
Yeah, and importantly on that one, we're talking to Murray Watt later in the week. This week he's in South Australia for the Evoke Ag Tech Conference. But on this subject of traceability, we've heard concerns from members of the industry about who will bear the costs. And there has been this common reference to a three-way split, federal, state and industry. But there's a bit of a concern developing, like you've adverted to there, that the federal government may not come up with its share of the contribution.
Yeah, and that is a real concern. We know that there's a pool of money that's been put on the table, Ricky, but we also know a substantial amount of that pool of money needs to actually go into the system itself. So in terms of, the cost relief for producers, for the actual tags, we're yet to see and yet to hear from the federal government, the amount of money that they're going to stump up.
Well, we'll find out from Murray Watt hopefully soon. We'll chat with him very shortly. But a very good report card came out from the Department of Primary Industries and Regions, PIRSA, about how well our farmers have done, about $17.3 billion in one financial year alone. How much of that are we going to see come back to the regions in tax revenue?
Yeah, look, it's an extremely positive-looking scorecard for, the primary industry sector. And, Ricky, it is a testament, I think, to the resilience of our regional communities and the regional businesses. They've had factors that they've had to face over the last 12 months, things like COVID-19, workforce shortages, trade sanctions, rising costs of doing business, and, of course, the usual weather events that we see. So I think industry should be extremely proud of its achievements. Those of us from the country always say that the regions punch well above their weight. We've seen that again with the results of this primary industry scorecard. But, it is important that these regions receive the infrastructure they need to support their communities.
Yeah, it's been a pretty hard period of not on a number of fronts, not just with flooding, as we know, as we get to river matters in a moment, but also with the condition of regional roads. I mean, I know there was talk in the past of a royalties for regions approach or something like that. I mean, there would have been, at least from that $17.3 billion, you'd think about $1 billion worth of tax revenue from regional SA that could be coming back.
Oh, look, absolutely, and it's got to be a priority for this government. In my opinion, it continues to be city-centric. And we need to ensure, and it's my job to put the pressure on the government to make sure that they are investing back into regional South Australia. And I think in light of the positive primary industries report card, I don't see any reason why a proportion of this revenue can't be used to put back into our regions, particularly into the Eyre Peninsula desalination project, which is so incredibly critical, not just for regional communities, but for primary production on the Eyre Peninsula.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the Eyre Peninsula in a minute. We've been chasing the Minister, Susan Close, about that. But just on another one, you mentioned city-centric government. Is this duck hunting review that's been announced by the Malinauskas government, by Susan Close, is it really about keeping Green voters in the Labor tent rather than anything to do with actual concerns about animal welfare in duck hunting?
Yeah, Ricky, this was announced in the chamber yesterday, this review on duck hunting. Reggie Martin gave notice that they and he will be moving to establish the committee. I was a bit surprised and a little bit perplexed, to be honest, Ricky, that this minister has thought to establish this sort of a parliamentary committee and inquiry, given that she's completely and absolutely ignored the recommendations that came out of the previous parliamentary committee, that is on the bow hunting inquiry. And this minister has moved to ban bow hunting, which was not the recommendations of that committee. So it's an interesting move, Ricky. We are yet to see the makeup of the committee and yet to form a position on whether we support that committee going forward. I'll certainly be listening closely to the government's reasoning when the motion is moved in the chamber today. And, it will be interesting to see if the committee is formed, whether the minister takes on the advice and recommendations of this committee.
Well, the upper house, you say, that's where that's being moved. It's conceivable then perhaps the Greens might be the crossbench MP that would possibly have the swing vote in that committee if the major parties take a view one way or the other. I mean, are you putting some people forward to be on that committee if it's actually formed?
Oh, absolutely, Ricky. We'll most certainly be putting people forward. Yes, I think there is an absolute possibility that the Greens will be that crossbench on that committee. Like I said, it'll be very interesting to have a look at the actual makeup, how many Liberal, how many Labor, how many crossbench, because I think that will certainly play a part into the what might come out in the recommendation.
Well, broadcasting as we do across several states, we know that in Victoria they've got the only other state where duck hunting is allowed. South Australia has the most permissive laws in the country regarding this. Does it look like that it is about appealing to animal welfare concerns rather than maybe listening to, say, people in the southeast about the economic and other benefits duck hunting brings to the region?
I think you've nailed it on the head, Ricky. I mean, we know that some people have said that Minister Close has gone to animal welfare groups before the election, and, this is where the ban of bow hunting has come out. She has since stated that it is an election commitment. I'm yet to see a document that states where it was an election commitment prior to the 2022 election. So, yes, I do think that this is Minister Close really appealing and appeasing the animal welfare groups.
Well, Nicola, we'll get to these water matters now. And first of all, you've heard, I think, the comments of Susan Close, the Water Minister, in response to what Anne Ruston, one of your Liberal colleagues, had to say about her view on buybacks. I mean, just to clarify, have buybacks had a significant impact in places like the Riverland where you live?
Oh, look, absolutely. Ricky, I think it's an unfortunate statement from the Minister. She's not lived through the millennium drought and the period of buybacks in a river community as I have, and, I've witnessed the devastation that brings to those communities. She really also doesn't appreciate the angst of regional communities around the word buybacks. Ricky, can I also, I listened to the interview and I just would like to make the point, I don't think Minister Close really understands the water market because she doesn't appreciate the difference between an individual or a company purchasing water which remains in the consumptive pool versus the government purchasing water and removing it from the consumptive pool, which in turn acts to distort the market. I think the Minister is quite confused. But the good news is, Ricky, listening to her interview, I think she actually agrees with me. The Minister spoke about voluntary buybacks being partial sales of water from irrigators in order to allow for efficiency projects to maintain productivity. And this is called a water efficiency measure, Ricky, not a buyback. And this is exactly what the opposition have been calling on for months. That is for her government to advocate for water efficiency measures, and that is the partial sale of water that is then invested into irrigation efficiencies to maintain or increase productivity over buybacks. Currently her federal counterparts have taken on-farm water efficiency projects off the table, and this was her own department's evidence at a recent Budget and Finance Committee hearing. So I'm asking the Minister to go to MINCO and advocate for the exact program she was talking about yesterday. That is both on and off-farm water efficiency projects back on the table federally, rather than taking the lazy option of mass buybacks, which destroys river communities across the basin, including and most importantly those in South Australia. So, Ricky, there might be a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, I think.
You might be finally meeting in the middle somewhere. Look, did hear the Minister also saying about desalination on the Eyre Peninsula. We've kept chasing her about this one. What's going on? She says an announcement is imminent in the next couple of weeks, but said Billy Light's point remains the base case for what they're putting forward. I mean, isn't that the one that caused all the controversy in the first place? Yeah,
this is the initial site looked at when we were in government. However, there were some significant local community concerns and objections around this site, predominantly environmental and economic concerns by industry. And then Minister Spears, who's now our leader, established the site selection committee so that the local community could have a say in the location to ensure that it was environmentally, economically and socially acceptable. So the site selection committee have put forward their recommendation of Sleaford Bay as a proposed new site. Community is on board with this. The Minister needs to listen to the community and needs to endorse this site, and then needs to commit to funds and work with her federal counterparts to ensure that this desalination plant is built where the community expects it to be built. Ricky, can I also just finally make the point that delivery of this desalination plant on the EP will mean less reliance on the River Murray water systems, because approximately 24% of the water supply on the EP comes from the River Murray. So if Minister Close is truly serious about ensuring more gigalitres are staying in the River Murray in South Australia, then this absolutely needs to be her number one priority.
Well, a legend has it there was a moonlit walk between Mike Rann and Kevin Rudd that saw money committed at the drop of a hat by the federal government for Adelaide's desal plant. Maybe at Friday's ministerial meeting, Minister Close and Tanya Plibersek could have a similar moonlit walk.
Absolutely. It really needs to happen, Ricky. The Minister talked about it being a money issue and it being a timing issue in regards to the desal, and she's correct. But the timing is critical. We know that the EP desal project is vital for water security for the regional townships across the EP, as well as for primary production. This project needs commitment. It needs commitment now, and the Minister needs to stump up and get this project delivered.
Nicola Centofanti, as I said at the start, a lot of hats you're wearing for the state opposition, including the Shadow Agriculture and Water Minister. Thanks so much for going through all of that with us today.
Thanks so much for your time, Ricky.